Would the Buffalo Sabres actually trade top star Jack Eichel? Well, we're taking a look at an article today that suggests 10 potential trades for Eichel. Where could he go? What would the return be? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're looking at some trade talk around superstar Jack Eichel of the Buffalo Sabres, who's had a ton of talk about him. Of course, the Sabres and Jack Eichel have been one of the teams and players most recently discussed in NHL circles here in the recent weeks, since we've heard Eichel come out publicly and express his frustration over the lack of losing, not getting in the playoffs. We saw the Sabres go through a major overhaul in their front office, firing, I believe it was 22 people. We have a new GM. There's a whole new structure there in Buffalo. And of course, I don't have reason to believe that Jack Eichel is going to be traded. I'm not sure they're going to go down that road unless he requests it. I came across an interesting article, which I think is fair to say from a Buffalo perspective, talking about what a Jack Eichel trade would look like, why it would be really, really tough to do, and why it's very, very likely to not happen. Now, of course, I do agree with some of the points and the fact that it is unlikely to happen, and it would be tough to do. But some of the trade proposals in this article, in my opinion, are completely insane and ridiculous, and teams would never offer that. And I guess to a degree that's kind of the point of the article, but at the same time to see what the perspective is from this article here and the Sabres writer looking at what they actually think it would take to pry Eichel out of Buffalo is just mind-blowing in my opinion. So let's dive in and take a look at these Eichel trade proposals. I think there might actually be 11, but there's one that I completely discounted. So we'll say the top 10 Eichel trade proposals. Now, one thing that I found very, very staggering as well is this article. He starts off by basically eliminating 19 NHL teams right off the bat, saying you don't have what it takes to trade for Jack Eichel. I found that absolutely crazy to think about 19 NHL teams who don't have the assets. I mean, obviously, like I said, Jack Eichel is a tremendous hockey player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not doing this video to bash Jack Eichel. I think he's a tremendous hockey player, one of the great young talents around the NHL. And I do think the Sabres would be kind of crazy to trade him. And if they do, it's going to be a really hard deal to win. No matter what, I'd hate to see them go down that road. And unless they request it, I don't see it happening. However, the fact that 19 NHL teams wouldn't have what it takes. I mean, obviously, you're going to want back a really solid top center iceman or a top 2 center iceman for sure. You're probably looking at a first round pick or more, a really solid young prospect. You're probably looking at 4 to 5 pieces in all coming back. Some current pieces are going to step in and help right away, and some really solid pieces for the future. There's no doubt about that. But let's dive in here and take a look at the other teams that he felt had what it would take to obtain Jack Eichel from Buffalo. And I'll post the pieces of the article here as we discuss each team on the screen. First up, we've got the Calgary Flames, where he's suggesting the return be Sean Monahan, Matthew Tkachuk, and a first-round pick. That is insane. There is no way the Flames would ever offer that. He says, unless a true number 1 center is coming back in a deal, you can't trade Eichel. Monahan's coming off a down year, but is a proven 30-goal scorer with 3 years left on his deal at 25 years old. However, he's not an elite talent like Jack Eichel. For that, the Sabres get a top-line winger in Matthew Tkachuk and a later first-round pick. That's insane. Like, really, would I say Eichel's better than Monahan? Perhaps, yeah. I mean, obviously, Monahan's, a little bit older, maybe not quite as solid. He is, but, overall, in the past, he's had some really good seasons. Obviously, his stats don't really project to be the same as Eichel. I think Eichel's ceiling long-term is a little bit higher than Monahan. But because he's not quite as an elite center as Eichel, that they get Matthew Tkachuk and a first-round pick, that's insane. There's no way the Flames would ever do that. But anyways, that's what he feels it would take. But obviously, trade number 1 is ridiculous. It would never happen. Next up, the Colorado Avalanche would have to offer up Nathan MacKinnon and Tyson Jost. Can you believe that? More than Nathan MacKinnon. I love Jack Eichel. He's a tremendous hockey player. But there's no way that he's better than MacKinnon. So why would you have to get MacKinnon plus something else? Can you believe that? And listen to the reasoning here. He says, the Avalanche would never give up MacKinnon, and he may even be a better player than Eichel. Right now, MacKinnon is 100% better than Jack Eichel. I'm sorry, Jack, but MacKinnon is better right now, hands down. And if you're the Sabres, you're getting a player that is a year older and has 3 fewer years left on his contract. And for that, the Sabres are getting some added center depth in Jost. Yeah, McKinnon's contract might not be as long, but right now it's considered a steal compared to Jack Eichel's. It's substantially less, and anything that you might have to overpay on that 3 to 4 years down the road, you're saving now. So to me, that's crazy. If Colorado called you up and said, I'll give you McKinnon for Eichel, you take that deal every day of the week. Insane. Anyways, let's move on here to the next one from the Carolina Hurricanes, who he says would have to offer up Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov. Imagine that. Aho has become a number one center in hockey and is just 22 years old. He has 4 years remaining on his contract as opposed to Eichel's 6. To make the deal worth it for the Sabres, they should need something substantial. Enter Svechnikov, one of the bright young goal scorers in the NHL. He netted 24 goals and 61 points last year at just 19 years of age. Sebastian Aho is a tremendous young, borderline elite center iceman in the NHL. And you think that maybe Eichel's a little better than him, so he'd have to throw in Svechnikov? No way. That would never happen, and I don't think that this person writing this article really has a good grasp on the value of Jack Eichel. I mean, like I said, I understand his point here that a deal would be very tough. It would probably never happen, but this is just getting a little bit ridiculous. Next up, the Dallas Stars would have to offer Tyler Seguin and Miro Heiskanen. Seguin is a point-per-game player, but is 5 years older than Eichel. For the difference, the Sabres get one of the best young defensemen in the NHL. Heiskanen may become a defenseman that'll be in the Norris Trophy running year after year with Rasmus Dahlin. Yeah, that's right. Heiskanen probably will become that defenseman. Tyler Seguin is a terrific offensive player. He is older than Eichel, not having a great year this past year. But really, that deal, again, would never happen. They're not getting two elite players for one. It's just not going to happen. I mean, for Dallas to get Eichel for Seguin and something else, I could see that maybe being a case because Seguin is older and is coming off a down year if they considered that trade, which I don't really think Buffalo would do. I can see the Stars having to throw something else in, but there's no way they would include Heiskanen for sure. Next up, we have the Edmonton Oilers, and he feels they'd have to include Connor McDavid, which they would obviously never do, as he says here, which he's right. They would never do that. But really, there's nothing else on the Oilers roster that could get you Jack Eichel? What about Leon Draisaitl? I mean, I wouldn't do that deal either. Leon is 100% better than Jack Eichel today. I would not do that trade. So clearly, I think there's more to the Oilers roster that could get a deal done, but for obvious reasons, just would not happen. Next up, we have the Florida Panthers, where he says would take Alexander Barkov, Spencer Knight, and a first-round pick. Can you imagine that? 3 terrific assets for one. Barkov is arguably on the same level as Eichel when it comes to young elite centers. However, Barkov's 1 year older and has just 2 more years in his contract. Losing that much control is valuable. So for that, they get Spencer Knight and a first-round pick? Wow. Knight was the 13th overall pick in 2019, is arguably the best goalie prospect in the world. Throw in a first-rounder for the hell of it. Imagine. New Jersey Devils would have to offer up Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and 2 first-round picks. Wow, what a haul that would be for Jack Eichel. Can you imagine? That would obviously never happen. Hughes had anything but a stellar rookie season. Despite entering the season as a Calder Trophy favorite, he never entered the conversation with just 21 points. Hughes, though, has an elite level potential. Given his rookie year, it's a huge question mark to whether he reaches that or not. Hischier, meanwhile, feels more like a Sam Reinhart type in that he was a top draft pick in a down draft year. He'll likely never be a point-per-game player, but has already proven to be a top 6 forward. The Devils picked 7th overall in the 2020 draft, meaning the Sabres would have back-to-back picks in that scenario. Well, that is quite a haul for Eichel, but the Devils would never do that. Can you imagine trading their top 2 elite prospect centers in Hischier and Hughes plus a first? I mean, that's insane. That would absolutely never happen. Next up, we have the New York Rangers, who he feels would have to offer Mika Zibanejad, Capo Caco, and 2 first-round picks. This is getting more crazy by the offer here. Zibanejad has taken a massive step in the last 2 seasons. He followed that 74-point campaign up with a 75-point campaign in 57 games. He's 4 years older than Eichel, has 2 years left at $5.3 million. Kakko, like Hughes, struggled in his rookie year with just 23 points, but entered the league with elite hype. He was a second overall pick just a year ago. So can you imagine those 2 first-rounders, what they could become, plus you get a top center iceman and a really solid top prospect. That the Rangers would never make that deal. The Maple Leafs, he feels, could make that trade with Austin Matthews and Rasmus Sandin. So essentially, you're kind of saying that, Eichel's as good or better than Matthews, which is, I'm sorry, again, not realistic. He says, I see Eichel and Matthews as washes as players. Both are going to be superstars for a decade plus. Matthews' hit is $1.6 million higher, and he has 2 fewer years on his deal. More expensive, less control, same caliber player. For that, Toronto's giving up a good young defenseman on the way in Sandin. Sorry, that does not make any sense to me at all. If Toronto calls you up, Buffalo, and offers you Matthews for Eichel, you take the trade, you take it all day long, and you offer him up 1-for-1, and you hang up the phone before they change their mind. Next up, the Vancouver Canucks, who he feels would have to offer Elias Patterson and Brock Besser. Yep, this is getting crazier as we go. Patterson is a bright young star developing in Vancouver. He won the Calder Trophy last year with 66 points in 71 games. He matched that this season with 66 points in only 68 games. Just under a point per game isn't Eichel level yet, but there's a good reason to believe he'll be considered in the same tier someday soon. For that bit of doubt that he won't reach Eichel level, the Sabres get a proven young goal scorer in Brock Besser. I'm sorry, but again, Patterson for Eichel straight up would be more than a fair deal. And if I'm Buffalo, I'm probably taking that trade. Patterson, I think, has as much of an elite ceiling as Eichel does, if not even potentially higher. You throw in Brock Besser, who's got a great contract and likely 30 goal scorer. I mean, that's just crazy. Winnipeg Jets, he says, could offer up Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers. Scheifele's the number 1 center in the NHL. He's been over a point per game for 4 straight years. He's 4 years older than Eichel, and Ehlers is a nice top 6 winger that's often been mentioned in trade talk for Rasmus Ristolainen. If Winnipeg wants Ristolainen as a throw-in, I wouldn't sneeze at it. So we could see Eichel and Ristolainen for Scheifele and Ehlers. I can see Winnipeg having interest in Ristolainen. Of course, who wouldn't have some interest in Jack Eichel? But that's quite a haul in return. That's probably the closest, though, out of all these offers to being somewhat fair. I still don't think the deal ever happens. I think Winnipeg would still be overpaying. But at the same time, it's probably the closest out of all these to being anywhere close to realistic. So, of course, I kind of made this video more than anything to talk about all the ridiculous Jack Eichel trade offers we've seen on social media and written articles like this. Like I said, I really don't think the Sabres are going down that road unless he forces their hand, which at this point is likely doubtful, at least for the next little while anyway. But and obviously, like this article does prove that it'd be extremely difficult for a trade like this to be pulled off. But at the same time, a lot of these offers we're seeing being mentioned are just completely delusional. There's no way that his value is as high as some people seem to think. I mean, yes, it's very high. I do expect the Sabres will get an awesome return. But you're looking at 2, sometimes 3 to 4 elite pieces going back for 1. That just is not going to happen at all. Let me know what your thoughts are on this article, these crazy trade proposals for Jack Eichel, the Buffalo Sabres. I personally don't see any of these as being remotely realistic, but I'd love to know what you think down below. So let me know your thoughts and we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.